Have you ever wondered how much history actually weighs? No, I don't mean in tons of archival paper. On December 31st, 1999, it weighed exactly one briefcase. While a panicked world awaited the Y2K digital apocalypse, in a room draped with heavy velvet, Boris Yeltsin uttered those famous words, "I am leaving." In that moment, the empire's nuclear scepter passed into the hands of a man the country barely knew. An obscure KGB officer with a piercing gaze and a quiet voice took up the mantle of power. 26 years have passed. The world has changed beyond recognition. Old alliances have crumbled. New generations have been born and raised. But the hand resting on that briefcase remains the same. How did a temporary successor transform into the absolute architect of an entire era? And what price did we pay for this structure? One that became our fortress or our cage. To understand this phenomenon, you have to remember the atmosphere of that time. The late 90s smelled of Chechen war smoke and total desperation. Society wasn't hungry for freedom. It was hungry for predictability. The new leader offered the country an unspoken, almost mystical contract. You give me your political loyalty. I give you economic stability. The facts of those early years felt like a miracle. Oil prices, as if bowing to the new master's will, surged from $12 to $100 a barrel. GDP grew exponentially. IMF debts were paid off ahead of schedule. A middle class was born in the cities. People who, for the first time, could afford a foreign car on credit and a vacation in Turkey. But while you were buying plasma TVs, the scaffolding of a new system was already being erected behind that facade of prosperity. A hostile takeover of the airwaves. A silent shifting of narratives. Big business was sent a clear signal. Make as much as you want, but stay away from the levers of power. Those who didn't get the message, like Khodorkovsky or Berezovsky, ended up either behind bars or in exile. The foundation of the vertical of power had been poured in concrete. With every passing year, the system became more monolithic. Tension built up unnoticed, like steam pressure in a sealed boiler. 2007, Munich. Putin looks world leaders in the eye and declares, "The unipolar world is dead." Back then, they just smiled politely. They shouldn't have. It wasn't just a speech. It was a declaration of faith. The architect began building a fortress against the outside world. Then came 2012 and Bolotnaya Square. The Kremlin realized the streets were no longer an ally. The response was surgical. Foreign agent laws and a tightening of the screws. And then, 2014, the Rubicon. Crimea changed everything. Geopolitical ambitions finally crowded out the economy. The Crimean Consensus and an 86% approval rating became armor that no sanctions, no premonition of isolation could pierce. In 2020, changing the Constitution amidst a pandemic was a mere formality. The transit of power was officially canceled. The architect decided to stay in his building forever. Today, we are at the end game of this grand construction. The start of the full-scale conflict in Ukraine in 2022 was the point of no return. The system has shifted into besieged fortress mode. This is no longer just a state. It is a military camp. The economy has been retooled for war. The nation's gaze has turned from west to east. Any dissent within is no longer just suppressed, it is criminalized. The word has become a dangerous weapon. Посмотрите на этот образ, ставший символом времени. Огромный пустой зал Кремля и непропорционально длинный белый стол. На одном его конце человек, принимающий решения, которые меняют климат на планете.
На другом – элита, министры, генералы. Они сидят, вцепившись в подлокотники кресел. Они понимают, их активы, их будущее и сама их жизнь больше не зависят от закона. Все это зависит от воли одного единственного человека на другом конце стола.
26 years in power is more than just a record. It is a process where the individual and the state have fused into one. Putin has ceased to be merely a president. He has become the keystone in the arch of this entire construction. And herein lies the ultimate irony of fate. By building the most rigid vertical of power in a century, the architect has made his creation profoundly vulnerable. In a system where every decision is made in a single office, there is no shock absorption. There are no spare parts. The defining question today isn't, what will he do tomorrow? It is this, what happens when he's gone? If you pull that single stone from the arch, will the wall hold? Or will it collapse under its own weight, burying an entire era beneath the rubble? There is no answer. Silence still hangs in the corridors of the Kremlin. But that silence no longer feels like calm. It feels like the lull before something utterly unpredictable.